Talking to yourself. If you narrate your day out loud like you're starring in a low-budget documentary, don't worry. You're not losing it, you're organising it. Talking to yourself is a cognitive technique called external self-regulation. Intelligent people often use speech to process thoughts, clarify ideas, and problem-solve in real time. By verbalising their reasoning, they convert abstract chaos into structured language, which helps the brain filter noise and identify solutions faster. It's basically a live debugging session, except the software is your mind. So if you catch yourself saying, okay, first coffee, then emails, that's not madness. That's your prefrontal cortex running a performance review, staying up late for no reason. If your creativity wakes up around 2 a.m. for no apparent reason, your IQ might be to blame. Research links night owl behaviour to higher intelligence. Smarter brains tend to override natural biological rhythms. The rest of the world powers down, and your neurons decide it's showtime. Historically, this is great company to keep. Darwin, Churchill, and Mozart were all chronic night owls. It's not insomnia. It's innovation running in dark mode. Late-night hours remove distractions, giving the intelligent brain the silence it needs to build connections. So, while others are dreaming, you're still thinking, or at least pretending to while scrolling existential memes. Either way, you're operating on a frequency where genius and sleep deprivation overlap, forgetting obvious things while remembering the complex. You can recall obscure historical facts or the entire periodic table, but forget your wallet, your password, and sometimes your own age. That's not carelessness. It's cognitive prioritization. Intelligent people naturally filter information based on perceived importance or novelty, not practicality. Their working memory is busy juggling complex ideas, so mundane details often get evicted. It's not a bug, it's a feature of deep thinkers. Your brain simply decided that remembering where you parked isn't as intellectually stimulating as pondering the meaning of consciousness. So when someone says, "How can you be so smart and still forget your keys?" remind them that you're running on advanced software. It just doesn't allocate brain power for trivial updates. Eating the same thing every day. If you eat the same thing every day, people might assume you've given up on joy. In reality, you might just be smarter than they are. Highly intelligent people often remove small, repetitive choices, what to eat, what to wear, because they understand decision fatigue. The more decisions you make, the worse those decisions get. So they automate the trivial to preserve mental energy for the important. Steve Jobs wore the same black turtleneck daily. Mark Zuckerberg built an empire dressed like a man perpetually late for class. The principle is simple. When your brain isn't busy picking between avocado toast or omelette, it has bandwidth left to solve real problems. Routine isn't dullness. It's efficiency disguised as monotony. So when someone calls you boring for eating chicken and rice every day, just smile. You're not predictable. You're optimized. Getting lost in thought. Everywhere. Anytime. If you regularly walk into rooms and forget why you're there, or miss your bus stop because your brain wandered into a philosophical rabbit hole, that's not forgetfulness. It's deep cognitive immersion. Intelligent minds often drift into introspection because they're constantly simulating, predicting, or analysing complex scenarios. Daydreaming activates the brain's default mode network, the same system involved in creativity, problem-solving, and abstract reasoning. While others stay anchored to the present, your mind is already 5 layers deep into what-if scenarios. You're not zoning out, you're downloading the next big idea. So next time someone has to snap their fingers to bring you back to reality, just say, "Sorry, I was somewhere smarter." Building complex systems you never follow. If your digital life looks like an air traffic control dashboard, Notion pages, colour-coded planners, and habit trackers you never open, you're not failing at productivity. You're just an overthinker with a designer's brain and a user's attention span. Smart people love creating systems because it satisfies their need for structure and logic. But once the system is built, the thrill evaporates. The puzzle is solved, and the brain moves on to find its next intellectual dopamine hit. It's the difference between being the city planner who designs the perfect map and the commuter who has to actually drive on it. This isn't laziness, it's architecture. You built the blueprint for a better life. You just forgot to live in it, needing alone time after socialising. If you need to disappear for 48 hours after a social event, congratulations. You're probably not antisocial. You're just operating on higher processing power. Intelligent people tend to analyse every conversation they have. Tone, timing, word choice, hidden meaning, and the one sentence they're convinced sounded weird. It's not that they dislike people. They simply feel people too deeply. Their brains run post-event diagnostics after every handshake. That's why they crave solitude. Studies show that those with higher cognitive ability experience lower life satisfaction when socialising too much. Their minds need quiet to defragment, recharge, and generate their best ideas. So when you sneak away after the party, while others chase an after party, It's not social failure. It's mental maintenance. Getting bored of small talk. If the phrase, "how about this weather," makes you question the meaning of life, you're not rude. You're just wired for depth. Intelligent people crave conversations with substance, ideas, paradoxes, theories, not humidity levels. Psychologists call this the need for meaningful stimulation. In other words, you'd rather debate the concept of time than hear about Karen's third cat. During small talk, your brain checks out. It starts solving invisible puzzles or writing your next life plan mid-sentence. The result? You look distracted, when in reality, you're mentally browsing a more interesting dimension. So next time you zone out mid, "So how's work?" Don't apologise. You're not ignoring them. You're just allergic to mediocrity. Delaying tasks, then crushing them under pressure. If you start projects 2 hours before the deadline and somehow still deliver brilliance, you're not lazy. You're a professional adrenaline alchemist. Intelligent people often delay tasks because their brains need the pressure cooker effect to activate full focus. When time runs out, the intelligent mind stops overanalyzing and starts performing. It's like hitting turbo mode. Distractions fade, priorities sharpen, and execution becomes almost surgical. Leonardo da Vinci, Douglas Adams, both masters of procrastination. They didn't fail to start. They were simply waiting for the perfect storm of panic and caffeine to summon genius. So if your best work happens in the final hour, it's not dysfunction, it's optimized chaos. Just don't tell your manager that panic-induced hyperfocus is your creative process. Making jokes nobody gets. If you've ever made a joke that only you laughed at, it's not a social problem. It's an intelligence problem. High IQ humour tends to live several layers above the average listener's bandwidth. It's built on obscure references, double meanings, and logic so twisted it loops back to brilliance. Studies show that intelligent people prefer complex humour, the kind that takes a second to land or requires a PhD in sarcasm. You're connecting linguistic dots others don't even see. That's why you often end up explaining your own joke mid-laugh, killing it completely. You're not unfunny, you're just performing in a language most people don't speak. Keep doing it. One day, you'll find someone who laughs before you have to explain the quantum physics reference. Always feeling a bit socially awkward. If you rehearse your coffee order 5 times and still say medium large at the counter, that's not social incompetence. That's an overactive analytical system sabotaging basic human interaction. Intelligent people overthink everything: body language, tone, eye contact, handshake duration, turning a 5-second exchange into a full-blown mental simulation. While others glide through conversation effortlessly, your brain is running diagnostics on every possible outcome. It's not shyness, it's mental overclocking. Research shows that intelligent individuals experience more self-monitoring during social situations, which disrupts spontaneity. Einstein, Newton, both famously awkward. When your brain is wired for theoretical physics, small talk feels like trying to debug reality in real time. So if you ever walk away from a conversation replaying it like CCTV footage, relax. You're not weird. You're just buffering, constantly questioning everything. If your default response to anything is "but why," you're not difficult. You're just running on investigative mode. Intelligent people have what psychologists call low cognitive closure, which means they're comfortable not knowing things until they make sense. Instead of accepting answers, they dissect them, often down to the atomic level of logic. This constant questioning isn't rebellion. It's how a high-functioning brain keeps itself honest. Smart people don't just want facts. They want to understand why those facts are true. That's why they challenge authority, re-examine social norms, and occasionally drive teachers, managers, and partners slightly insane. Socrates built an entire career out of annoying people with questions. Einstein called it holy curiosity. You just call it Tuesday. Not trusting instructions unless you've tested them yourself. If your first reaction to any instruction is, "let me just figure it out myself," congratulations. You're running the DIY edition of intelligence. Smart people have a strong need for cognition, meaning they prefer thinking things through instead of taking directions on faith. When you rebuild IKEA furniture without the manual or bake cookies without measuring, you're not being rebellious. You're experimenting. Intelligent minds learn best by testing, observing, and improving. Following the manual feels like mental autopilot. Designing your own process feels like freedom. Sure, it occasionally ends with extra screws or inedible cookies, but it also builds sharper problem-solving instincts and better stories, getting emotionally attached to inanimate objects. If you've ever apologised to a chair for bumping into it or felt sad throwing away a worn-out t-shirt, you're not broken. You're emotionally overqualified. This tendency, anthropomorphism, is the habit of assigning human qualities to non-human things. It's not childish, it's a sign of high emotional intelligence. People who do this often possess advanced empathy and creativity. Their emotional radar is so sensitive, it extends beyond people. They see stories in objects, history in textures, and personalities in furniture. Your brain doesn't draw a hard line between living and non-living. Everything deserves respect, even the Roomba. So next time someone calls you weird for naming your plants or saying sorry to your desk, just remind them. Emotional depth looks strange to shallow people. Do you recognise any of these habits in yourself? Let me know in the comments and subscribe for more curious videos like this one.